She's been accused of being a bimbo who can't understand simple math. She's been told she's too pale, that she's a sex-crazed nymph who taunts vulnerable males with her shameless postures and substantial boobies. And worst of all, her many detractors have said if Barbie has a message for her young, adoring fans, it's don't eat, just go ahead and starve yourself, girls. That's bad form, Barbie. Barbie doesn't care. Barbie says I might not be so good at abstract algebra, but I'm a billion-dollar babe, an 11.5-inch icon of infinite sex appeal who's had more adventures than the 3,237 people in the Old Testament put together. We hope this hasn't offended anyone. The point is, Barbie has offended someone. In fact, she's upset more people than Ted Bundy, than Adolf Hitler. Okay, maybe we went too far. But Barbie is definitely a controversial figure, or shall we say figurine, a more suitable feminine-sounding designation for this very seductive dolly. She's been hit with every kind of criticism you can think of since her American creator Ruth Handler came up with the idea of a porno doll back in 1959. Yes, a porno doll. We didn't come up with that. It was the Washington Post that recently talked about Barbie's pornographic origin story. As that story goes, after Ruth and her husband and another guy co-founded Mattel, present value $7.73 billion in 1945, Ruth and her teenage daughter were in Switzerland on a shopping spree in 1956 when something in a shop window stopped them in their tracks. That was an 11.5-inch plastic beauty with lustrous blonde hair and ruby red puckered lips. She was German, and she was very pleased to meet you. "Hallo, Frenda," the doll seemed to say to people. Her name was Bild Lily, a cartoon character later designed as a sex toy or a toy gift meant as a joke. And that's how Barbie was born. It was a novel concept back then, making a doll look like a stripper rather than a pint-sized young Greta Thunberg. The German porn star effigy transformed into American Barbie, a highly desirable, conspicuous consumer of epic proportions born on March 9, 1959, who later went from being an airheaded fashion model to a hard-working surgeon, an outstanding athlete, a rock star, a doctor, and of course, the heroic all-American astronaut. Barbie took off in more ways than one. Mattel sold 350,000 Barbie dolls in the first year. Since then, she's been cuddled and mollycoddled, dressed up, delimbed, and beheaded by girls in around 150 countries. Over 1 billion Barbies have sold. In 2020 alone, the entire Barbie doll business racked up a staggering $1.35 billion, but this came after a Barbie slump, which we'll discuss later. At present, 3 of her are bought every second of every day. She's appeared in countless cartoons, TV series, and movies, sometimes with her hunk of a boyfriend Ken, a muscular dude born in 1961 who in the early years suffered from male-patterned baldness. His hair fell off, so Mattel changed to plastic hair. Today, a balding Ken would be ideal. You'll understand why soon. Mattel didn't exactly replicate German Lily, described as a gold digger exhibitionist and a floozy. Mattel knew they had to tone Barbie down a bit for American consumption, which meant shaving off the nipples and reducing Lily's exaggerated full lips. Barbie was still sexy, but she was classy too. She was certainly no floozy, although she was accused of being a bit of a dimwit. And this is where the trouble started. Barbie might have been able to hold down some impressive jobs, but when she spoke, when Talking Barbie appeared on the scene, she sounded less like a surgeon and more like a low-IQ imbecile whose meaning of life was shopping and more shopping. In some parts of the Muslim Middle East, she was regarded as shameful. Saudi Arabia banned Barbie in 2003, calling her a symbol of decadence to the perverted West. The country called Barbie Jewish, which she kinda was, given Ruth Handler modeled Barbie on herself and Handler was Jewish. In Iran, Barbie's boobs and revealing clothes didn't go down so well, so a top toy maker there introduced Dara and Sara, a far more suitable doll for Iranian kids. That toy maker said in 2002, "I think every Barbie doll is more harmful than an American missile." In the West, poor old Barbie was taking just as much flack. Part of it related to Barbie's lack of diversity. Even though Black and Hispanic Barbies were introduced in 1980, Barbie had actually been released back in the day as both a blonde and a brunette, but it was only the blonde version that was mass-marketed. Not just gentlemen preferred blondes, but young girls did too, or that's what the sales figures showed. Barbie's attempts to go through millions of years of human evolution in a few decades wasn't good enough, so in 2016 Mattel had another shot at equal representation when new Barbies came with 7 different skin tones, 22 eye colors, and 24 hairstyles. In 2021, Mattel introduced a new line of Barbies with 22 skin tones, 94 hair colors, 13 eye colors, and 5 body types. There's now even a wheelchair Barbie to represent the 3.3 million people in the US that use wheelchairs, plus the millions elsewhere. Mattel wanted this to be realistic, so the vehicles even feature a working brake, and there's a wheelchair ramp you can buy for those tricky parts of the living room floor. In 2019, Mattel went a step further when it introduced the customizable Barbie after the company heard that kids don't want their toys dictated by gender norms. Gender-neutral Barbies might just be a work of genius by the Mattel creative team, given that the doll might not conform to traditionally male and female clothes and accessories, therefore possibly doubling revenue opportunities. Cynical? Maybe. Watch on. This was a breakthrough for Barbie, especially the new body types, which helped take the heat off of her for a while. For years, Barbie had been blamed for compelling kids to think they needed to be thin just like her. She'd been called everything under the sun over the decades, but it was her unrealistic body proportions and the possibility that might encourage young folks not to eat, lowering their self-esteem so much that they starve themselves, that really put Barbie on the spot. It was this, not her blithe ignorance of complex mathematical equations or her brazen Caucasianness, that was her main enduring fault. So, let's have a look at Barbie's proportions, the ones she's had from the start. We'll come back to her new body type soon. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but Barbie's body is unattainable for the vast majority of people. To look like Barbie, you might have to change yourself, filing, shaving, adding, reducing, expanding. Basically, putting yourself through countless augmentation and diminution surgeries. People actually have done that. Some have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars enhancing their bodies to look like a doll. This is sometimes called Barbie syndrome. As you know, Barbie is 11.5 inches tall, and given that she's made at a scale of 1/6, that would give human Barbie a height of 5 foot 9 inches. Applying the same scale, Barbie would have a sizable 36-inch chest. That's fine, many women do, but the Barbie doll has a tiny waist, which at scale on a human would make her waist 18 inches and her hips just 33 inches. Human Barbie would likely have backache issues, although some researchers have said that Barbie's proportions are not impossible. Nonetheless, according to researchers at the University Central Hospital in Helsinki, Finland, for a real woman to look like Barbie, she wouldn't even have the 17 to 22% body fat that she'd need to menstruate. Even if some women in the world do grow to have proportions something close to Barbie's, the vast majority of the 92% of American girls aged 3 to 12 that own a Barbie won't grow up to be incredibly skinny and buxom. Barbie is an outlier, and this is why some scientists have said that dolls might cause kids to have body dysmorphic disorder. It was said a few years ago that a real version of Barbie would only have half a liver and just a few inches of intestine, and that she'd have to crawl around on all fours. With her skinny neck, her head would just collapse like a lettuce on the point of a twig. But we think that was a slight exaggeration. Some people have refuted it, saying it's offensive to Barbie-type women to say that. Taylor Swift is 5'9", and she's only 54 kilos. The Asian supermodel Fifi Sun is 5 foot 10.5, and she's just 49 kilos. Although in parts of Asia, women can have smaller frames. Maybe Asian Barbie might be more realistic, in some cases at least. The science about Barbie's body causing psychological harm isn't settled and mostly relates to a 2006 British study published in the Journal of Developmental Psychology, which found that girls with Barbies at a young age expressed more concern with being thin than non-Barbie owners. It's never helped Barbie's cause that in 1963 one of her outfits came with a little book titled How to Lose Weight. In it, Barbie advised, "Don't eat." Shame on you, Barbie. In another book, Barbie's weighing scales were set at 110 pounds, which for a woman who's supposedly 5 foot 9 inches is really light. Possible, but possibly unhealthy, although some women are perfectly healthy and look a bit like Barbie. A few years ago, 4 new body types were introduced: original, curvy, petite, and tall. Curvy Barbie is certainly not very big. She's just a bit fuller in the waist and hips, but we won't go as far to call the doll fat. The word fat is often deemed offensive these days, but according to various media articles, it's what young girls called curvy Barbie. They hated fat, curvy Barbie. Curvy Barbie on a human scale would actually be very slim. This 5'6" woman would have a 24.8-inch waist, 35.9-inch hips, way slimmer than the average gal from the Western world, especially in the US, but also in the UK, where the average woman, aged 16 to 24, is 5'5" and has a 31.3-inch waist that goes up to 33.43 inches on average for British women of all ages, while 29.5% of the British adult population is obese, according to recent studies. In a scientific research paper titled "You Can Buy a Child a Curvy Barbie Doll, but You Can't Make Her Like It," Scientists found that girls didn't want to play with curvy Barbie. They said the girls might have negative attitudes toward larger bodies, which they say could indeed lead to body image disturbance, disordered eating, low self-esteem, stress, anxiety, and depression. Around half of the girls said the reason they didn't want to play with curvy Barbie was that she was not pretty and had no friends and was fat or chubby. And that sounds rather cruel, but 34% of the kids called normal Barbie sad, and 29.8% called her not smart. Tall Barbie was called mean by about a third of the girls. Either kids are mean, or Barbie just can't win. Other researchers said that tall Barbie would be 5'11" with a size 4 waist of 22 inches, so she'd also be ultra thin. Her bust size, though not recorded, also looks like a 36, and her hips are 28 inches. In fact, the actress Nicole Kidman is 5'11". She's very slim and still looks healthy, just like Barbie. Kidman reportedly has a bust size of 34 inches, her waist is 23 inches, and her hips are 36 inches. Her measurements are close to Barbie's, besides the hips, and Kidman already has rather slender hips. It's thought she works out about 5 times a week, but she also said she likes to pig out on junk food. To look like Kidman and Barbie would take a lot of work, especially at an older age, where Kidman is 55. But don't fear, according to research published in 2022, a daily 10-minute walk has helped Korean octogenarians live 40% longer than the people in the study that hardly ever went for walks. There are reams of scientific studies that tell us just a little bit of regular exercise can help prevent illness and disease. You don't need to have Barbie or Kidman's workout routine to be healthy. We forgot petite Barbie, who would be 4 foot 11 inches with a size 2 waist of 20 inches. That's 4 inches less on the waist than curvy Barbie, who has 2 inches more than normal Barbie. Compare that to the average American woman who is 5'4", weighs 170 pounds, and has a waist size of 38.7 inches, according to the CDC. Mattel has pushed for representation, only it seems to have forgotten about the majority of women, not just in the US but much of the world. Still, now there are 176 types of Barbies with 9 body types. There's a bald Barbie, even though women don't lose all their hair like men do. About 40% will lose some hair by the time they're 50, and some might lose their hair during cancer treatment. But bald Barbie doesn't represent women who aren't in treatment, an incredibly small number. There's a Barbie with a prosthetic limb, 2.1 million men and women in the US have one, and a Barbie with vitiligo, 0.05% to 1.55% of Americans have it. This is a condition that makes people's skin lose its natural color in certain patches around the body. Some of the newer Barbies are slightly narrower in the hips, and some have broader shoulders, but Barbie is hardly inclusive. For instance, there's no morbid obesity Barbie, the doll who might die too young if she didn't receive bariatric surgery, and might have to take 12 different medications throughout the day for a vast range of obesity-related illnesses. There'd be a lot of money and accessories for this obese Barbie, that's for sure. Obesity is a reality in America, with reports saying 12.1% of US adults have a mobility disability with serious walking issues. Not all have morbid obesity, but the condition often goes that way. Media articles these days talk about the increase in obese Americans using mobility scooters, but there's no mobility scooter Barbie, perhaps another missed revenue opportunity for Mattel. It's thought obesity in the US costs taxpayers anywhere from $147 billion to $210 billion a year. Although Reuters called this an obesity gold rush for Big Pharma, working in a market that'll be worth $50 billion by 2030. Mattel is certainly missing out on that gold rush. Given 41.9% of adults in the US are obese, and about 10% are morbidly obese, and according to the CDC, these numbers keep increasing, why is there no obese Barbie or morbidly obese Barbie, especially for cities such as Memphis, Arlington, Dallas, Detroit, and New Orleans, where 32 to 35% of the people are obese? This data is actually quite old. It's thought the numbers have increased since it was released. Barbie suddenly doesn't feel very representative of the population. Does this have anything to do with the possibility that kids wouldn't go for the obese Barbie? They'd say that it has no friends? We don't mean to be cruel, we're just making the point related to what kids want and what they said in a study. A cynic might say what Mattel really cares about is making money. Just like the old-school materialistic Barbie. In 2012, Barbie's global sales decreased by 3%. They went down 6% in 2013 and another 16% in 2014. This was partly because kids were buying Frozen's Elsa doll, who, let's face it, also has the almost impossible body of the original Barbie doll. They look very similar. Skinny, blonde bombshell dolls obviously sell well. Some media have said it was Mattel's shaky bottom line back then that resulted in the new line of diverse dolls, not compassion and an appetite for adherence to political correctness. Other media said the 2021 diversity push was because the pandemic threatened Mattel's revenue. So, in conclusion, making the perfectly inclusive Barbie doll might be impossible because kids don't seem to want to play with reality. And Mattel can't afford to make dolls no one wants, even if that would be the safer and more righteous thing to do. Come to think of it, raw materials would also cost a lot more for a 500-pound doll, so Mattel would have to charge more for what could be a less popular doll. Despite the new diversity measures then, Barbie looks nothing like the majority of people, and it'll probably stay that way. Mattel can't please everyone, but over $1 billion in profits a year means they must be doing something right. Now we think you need to watch Most Evil Kids in the History of Mankind, or have a look at What If the Real Annabelle Escaped.